Hi, my name is Nicole Foley, and my topic is electronic monitoring in the workplace. For a brief introduction on this topic, it is extremely important to note that privacy has not been clearly articulated in the Constitution. Instead, it's been implied from different amendments. And the court generally feels that employees and individuals have different privacy expectations in the home and in the workplace. And this is kind of represented in the Electronic Communications Privacy Act of 1986, which is intended to provide for criminal and civil liability for any person who intentionally intercepts, endeavors to intercept, or procures any other person to intercept any wire, oral, or electronic communication. And while it was good for policymakers to include electronic communication in this act, it still lags behind our current definitions of electronic communication. Since under this act, emails that are not intercepted at the moment they're transmitted are not considered liable under this law. So to understand a bit about the employee side of electronic monitoring, it may first be helpful to understand personal web usage. Personal web usage, or PWU, can be problematic. For example, if an employee is using company time to watch pornography or conduct online shopping. And personal web usage can also be a constructive behavior. For example, checking sports scores or some entertainment news for a few minutes can provide employees with a break from repetitive tasks and in turn may result in a productivity boost. So it is necessary to break these different PWUs into distinct dimensions. This figure shows 4 distinct dimensions or clusters of PWU behaviors. There is the work-life PWU cluster, there's a self-development cluster, the citizenship cluster, and the hedonic cluster. Each one represents a different area of PWU, and they each have different perceived benefits to the organization and perceived benefits to the individual. Thus, all personal web usage cannot and should not be weighed the same because they're different based on this matrix. Where privacy invasions of electronic monitoring are well documented, it is unclear the level of benefits that this can provide to employees, but this does not mean that they don't exist. There are benefits on employee behavior. 52.9% of employees felt that electronic monitoring fostered a sense of job security because those employees knew that if employers looked at what they were doing, they weren't going to find anything bad compared to maybe their coworkers. Additionally, electronic monitoring provided some employees with a motivation to correct bad or inappropriate behavior because they knew their employers were watching. There are also benefits based on work performance. Some employees felt that prior knowledge of monitoring practices can foster creativity and increase their productivity when they knew their employers were watching. Additionally, it has benefits with the relationship employees have with their employer, and this is based upon prior notification when there's transparency and employees know the type of monitoring that can take place. Even though there are many benefits that some researchers have highlighted with electronic monitoring and employees, not everyone is going to feel the same. And this is based on individual differences, and individual differences are determined on one, ethical orientation and an individual's prior beliefs. And these are broken up into 2 main groups. formalists, which are rule-oriented, and utilitarianists, who are outcome-oriented. This represents the impact of utilitarianism on organizational trust and usefulness. The results show an indirect relationship for low utilitarian employees, which represents negative connotations for low levels of this ethical orientation. High utilitarians don't experience this negative relationship because they can see the usefulness in monitoring outcomes. When monitoring practices are perceived as unfair, employees may deviate with noncompliance. And prior notification and clear policies can help diffuse the situation and allow employees to feel like they have some sense of control in the situation. Managers should embrace this knowledge in addition with the knowledge of individual differences to craft better policies that inform their monitoring practices. So now that we know the reasons behind the employee side of electronic monitoring, we should discuss the employer side of electronic monitoring. And there are three main reasons that employers will monitor their employees. The first is a business purpose, which is to ensure organizational success. The second is a liability avoidance purpose, which is to prevent lawsuits. And the third is the investigatory purpose, which is to obtain evidence for investigatory claims. And even if courts tend to favor the employers need to consider the level of privacy invasiveness in their monitoring practices, because unreasonable monitoring can pose problems for employee morale, employee satisfaction, and the levels of stress that these employees have. The implications for the future suggest that it is unlikely the law will catch up. So it's really important for managers to strive to achieve a balance between their business needs and their employees' privacy needs. Managers can set up better guidelines to ensure legality and compliance, and more transparency can lead to perceptions of fairness and less stress. And this can be achieved with prior notification.